finally Friday.
It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by Cal Racing Cares. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. Ray, it's hard to believe it's only been a week since we were trying to process those horrifying images from Southern California as the wildfire swept through so quickly at San Luis Rey Downs. Desperate attempts to get hundreds of horses evacuated, and people did a remarkable job in that respect. Not all the horses made it, unfortunately. But the outpouring of support and assistance since then has been huge across the industry and across the country, with hundreds of thousands of dollars raised. The question now is, Southern California was already dealing with a stabling problem. Mm-hmm. Now what?
Yeah, it was. This fire was one of the worst things I've seen in the industry, and the reaction to it was one of the best things I've seen in the industry in the years I've been involved. Just as a side note, unfortunately, there are some people apparently are scamming and taking advantage of a situation, putting up GoFundMe pages that are not putting money toward the actual recovery, and maybe even taking advantage of some of the supplies that were donated. People that came in that didn't really need anything that because of fire losses. But you're right. The stabling and vanning issues at racetracks in Southern California have been sort of in a crisis mode since Hollywood Park closed. And there's been really no solution to the problem that created.
Well, a note on what you said about the scamming thing. Go to calracingcares.com right. To make sure that's where you're going to find the legitimate links. One of the things was that San Luis Rey Downs was part of the stabling solution, and now it's not available. Del Mar, where the horses are now, can hold them for a while, but it's owned by an agricultural district, which it's basically a fairgrounds, and next spring that space might be needed for fairs. So it's not clear that Del Mar can be the permanent place where these horses are stabled. Los Alamitos, at the same time, we don't know how long that track is going to be around. So what do you think is the solution going forward?
Well, it's still possible that San Luis Rey Downs may reopen. The Stronach Group has not made a decision yet that owns that facility. They also obviously own Santa Anita. But this week they floated the idea that they may be building hundreds of additional stalls at Santa Anita. They would be located in the infield parking lot area, which is currently used 2 or 3 times a year. To me, that seems like the best solution going forward. I really have a hard time believing that the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, which leases the track, would be able to get approval from the 22nd Fair District to have year-round stabling. That county fair is a big deal at Del Mar, and so right now, I think short of reopening San Luis Rey Downs with the same amount or even more stalls, to me, Santa Anita looks like the best solution.
And it's really tough for these small trainers that, some of them might have lost a large percentage of their stable. We've heard a couple of examples. Yeah. If they don't have that many horses. And Frank Stronach of the Stronach Group has pointed out the need to support these smaller stables. In fact, they run races now where the conditions are you have to be a small stable to run in the race. So he's concerned about that, and this unfortunate event points out how difficult it can be when you have a small stable and you lose a couple of horses. It can be very damaging, and maybe you can't continue your career.
Yeah, the issue of super trainers, guys that have multiple strings and hundreds of stalls. That's not just a California issue. New York has the same problem, and what ends up happening is you have a handful of trainers who control the entry box in certain types of races, and it's not good for the end product for the horse player when you end up with short fields, because trainers don't want to run against themselves. They don't want to run 3 horses in a maiden race. So they're trying to do some things with the conditions of maiden races and I'm not sure what else, but I know that this is an issue that Frank Stronach finds to be very important. He wants the little guys to survive these challenging times.
And again, there still is assistance and donations needed to help the folks in Southern California. So again, go to calracingcares.com where you can help. All right, Ray, we were at Gulfstream Park last week when this all came down, and we were, just immediately our attention turned to this, and we were watching the images, and very disturbing. But we were there for a positive thing, and it turned out to be a great event. The Clasico del Caribe and the surrounding races. I was really astonished, to be honest. Looking at the crowd at Gulfstream Park, it was packed.
Yeah, it was as big a day as I've seen in Gulfstream Park since they rebuilt the facility. It felt like Florida Derby Day in terms of the crowd, except the language being spoken was mostly Spanish because it was Clasico del Caribe Day, and people from multiple countries came for it, and people from those countries, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico, who live in the Miami community, took part of it. It was a fun event. The Caribbean Turf Federation that put it on would like to come back to Gulfstream Park. This was the first time it's ever been held there. It's always rotated among the Latin American countries. And I think the Stronach Group would like to have it back too. Not every year, but based on the wagering that was on those races, it was a smashing success.
Yeah, we were surprised that the wagering totals were around $4 million. The handle just for those 5 races,
right?
For the Clasico and the other Latino races. It also points out just the horses or the people were pulling for their country, which was awesome. It's kind of like a little mini Olympics or a mini World Cup. And that's something that the Breeders' Cup isn't quite that, because it's all about the individual owners. It's not very nationalistic. And I think we could do with an event where it was more about the countries being represented by horses rather than representing their owners. So I think there was a definite lesson there in what could be. And it was also kind of a shining moment for racing where you can see what is possible when you get the right confluence of events. A packed crowd, people were betting on the races. That's all you can ask for.
The 5 races from the Clasico del Caribe Day, the winner's circles were the happiest winner's circles I've ever seen that I can recall, at least at American racetracks. It was wild. If only we had some video that we could share with people to just demonstrate what an exciting day it was, Scott.
Aha. I have just what you're looking for. We'll wrap up the Friday show with some scenes from last weekend at Gulfstream Park. Thanks so much for joining us. The Friday show presented by Cal Racing Cares.